Hey y'all, hey, it's JJ Conway. Welcome to Building Wealth Together, where our goal is to help you walk in abundance and leave a legacy. It's Juice with JJ. This is where I keep you informed about scams, financial controversies, and money shenanigans so you can keep your cash flow out of their pockets and funding your dreams. Let's get into it.
Hey y'all, hey, it's JJ Conway, and I've got a doozy for you today. Maya Angelou once said that people will forget what you said, forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And I tell you what, if I wasn't so close to making A-list on Southwest, and if I didn't hear about so many complaints about the other big airline in my market, I would probably stop flying Southwest after the blatant discrimination experience on their flights this weekend. Yes, that's flights with multiple plural S, all right? So many of you know I went to FinCon, which was amazing, and now flying out to see Les Brown at John Talarico's breakthrough event. I can't wait to meet my mentors in person. It's been a fun summer flying from place to place, but the airline I used to love has really suffered from personnel shortages and lack of schedule reliability. Let me tell you about what happened and how I, if I were training the flight attendants, would have trained my staff to handle the situation. So on the flight from Orlando to Dallas, I ended up in an aisle seat about a third of the way back. I prefer to be up front, but because I had an early B boarding pass, I didn't bother to upgrade. For those who haven't flown on Southwest, it's a no seats assigned flight like the bus or the train. So you don't get a seat assignment. What you get on your boarding pass is a boarding order. So they're going to have their pre-boards like wheelchair, those who are elderly need some extra time, they go first. Then you line up in your boarding order, A1 through 60, and you load the plane in the order of your boarding. You pick whatever seat you want, and it's basically you pick the best seat available at the time you get to log in or get to go into the airplane. Then they'll board the families with the young children, any A-list members, military in uniform, and then they move to boarding order B1 through 60, and then C1 through 60. If you're at about B20 or earlier, you can generally get an aisle or a window. If you're in the C groups, you're not only going to not get an aisle or a window, but most likely you're not even going to be able to bring your roll-on carry-on. You're going to have to check it, right? If you're in A20 or earlier, which is where I normally like to be, you can generally get a good aisle or window seat so far up front that if there's any space left on the plane, people who have passed you to try to find a window or aisle seat or find two seats together, they don't usually make it back up to you by the time they realize there's no good seats left in the back and they're trying to get anything they can where they can fit their carry-on and end up sitting in the middle of the plane. So I'm not in the best spot in the world, but I'm in a good spot. I'm on the aisle. It's where I like to be so I can get work done. And I don't know, y'all, I don't know what I'm going to do with all my free time after finishing this doctorate, because right now it's like eat, sleep, church, doctorate, speak a little, play with the kids a little, cook something for Mr. Man, and then more doctorate. I have missed out on quite a bit of networking at these events and missed out on a lot of sleep I could be getting on the airplanes due to my doctorate work, but I trust that it'll be worth it. So when I'm on these flights, and as soon as I find my seat, I typically pull out my laptop and I do some work while boarding. I do this for two reasons. First of all, not many people want to sit next to a big girl, but they certainly don't want to sit next to one who is going to be working the whole flight and you assume is going to keep bumping into you the whole time. Now, I try really, really hard to let the middle seat sitters get their full use of the armrest. After all, they're stuck in the middle, you know? And if you didn't know, here's your travel tip for the day. Airplane etiquette says the middle seat holder gets both middle armrests. So on Southwest, you pick your own seat based on the order you board the plane. And if you sit next to me, if you choose that middle seat next to me, I want you to know up front what you're getting. So I'm really stoked with this flight when the door closes and there's no one in between me and the lady next to me. She's kind of a big girl too, so I can see why the seat was overlooked. Neither one of us are using seatbelt extenders, and we both have our armrests all the way down, but there's certainly no wiggle room in our chairs. The flight attendant comes and asks me, if I would be willing to move to the back so someone can swap my seat. No, I answer, I don't want to sit in the back. I have a really tight timeline. Why do they need to move? He doesn't answer me. He rolls his eyes, he huffs, says, never mind, just as another flight attendant comes up and asks has everything been resolved. No, he says, she's being difficult. Now I'm in shock because I don't think I'm being difficult. Remember, Southwest is a first come, first serve plane. And so I'm thinking this and thinking to myself about all the times where nobody moved for me and my son or me and my husband. And I'm about to say, but you didn't even tell me why you need the seat and why they can't just move up and sit up here between us. Then the senior flight attendant comes up before I can say that. So now there's 3 of them. They're all standing next to me, right? She's holding this suitcase and asking if we're good. No, they say. And she says to them, but it's medical. Now, she's not talking to me. She's talking to them. But I'm sitting here listening to this. I'm starting to feel a little bad, y'all. I'm starting to feel bad because if it's medical concern, then, of course I care and I want to be a good citizen, right? So I'm trying to get their attention to ask why they want me to move, but they stomp off to the back. Guy comes back again, asking me to move. Would you just move into the middle seat so this other passenger can take the aisle? I point to my laptop. I'm working. I chose this seat specifically, and it's a long flight. Why can't they sit in the middle? The flight attendant, no kidding, y'all, throws up his hands, rolls his eyes, huffs and turns around, and the guy across the aisle from me says, I'll move. He heads back there, and this tiny older woman sits in his aisle seat. She starts telling her seatmate she didn't realize she'd have to sit in the back, and she's so glad they were able to get someone to give up their seat for her. There did not appear to be anything insidious or entitled about her. I say this because I had to hear her talk about it 4 times. Maybe she was senile or something, but her seatmate was a young girl, polite and listening to it the first 3 times as if she's never heard of it before, This lady simply did not want to sit where she was sitting. She didn't want to be near the bathroom, and there was another reason. She would drop her voice, so I couldn't catch until later. The medical suitcase was someone else's, not hers. Before we get to what the real reason was, let me tell you what else happened. Just after takeoff, Mr. I'll Move, who was sitting across the aisle from me, comes back up and sits in the middle seat next to me. All 3 of us are kind of big, y'all. Me, him, and the lady on the other side of him. But he laughs it off, saying it's cool being between 2 beautiful ladies. I thanked him for taking the hit for us because I really did not want to move to the back. That extra time to get off the plane could make or break my trip. And he said it's fine. He just wanted the plane to take off. Turns out he works for the airline. Now, I wish I could tell you what he does, y'all. It's so cool. But that would immediately identify him because it's such a unique job, all right? And I get that. I get that he just wanted to take off and get this plane to where it was going. And a lot of people feel that way. It's funny to me that when I'm in line on Southwest and I ask what people's boarding order is, and usually I upgrade. So I'm like in the front, like A1 through A10, right? People invariably are like, well, we're all going to the same place. And I find it hilarious because if I was in front of them, they would be asking me because a lot of times people are very surprised to see me up in that front upgraded section. Okay. So in any event, I get what he was saying. The plane is going where it needs to go, whether we're sitting here or sitting there. Get that. However, as many times as I've had to sit separate from my kids on trips like this, there's no reason for the flight attendant to get mad that I didn't move when he didn't give me any kind of reason that someone wants to move other than someone wants to move. And then his getting mad at me only makes me want to dig my heels in more. Kind of like black girl, stand your ground, but on a seat instead of a sidewalk. Quick aside, you've probably heard of stand your ground, but not how I'm using it here. Stand your ground laws are basically about the right to self-defense, the right to defend your home with firearms. But a couple years ago, a group of black women created a stand your ground movement to simply mean holding your space while walking on the sidewalk or in the mall or any other place where people expect you to move, but you really shouldn't have to. You would be surprised at how many white people And I love white people, y'all. I'm married to one. My mom is white. But you would be surprised at how many white people, especially women, expect you to move out of the way for them when you actually have the right of way. Now, they'll move for another white woman, but they expect beige, brown, and black women to move for them. Now, I know this is a gross generalization, but if you think I'm making this up, you should Google it. Or even better, go sit somewhere and people watch for a bit. You'll see it. And if you are a beige, brown, or black woman, I encourage you not to move out of the flow of walking. If you have the right of way, you don't have to get in the grass as others pass by. You are on that sidewalk first, and you have every right to walk down it with your head held high. All right, back to this airplane. The fourth time the little old lady talked about how grateful she was to move, it was to the same flight attendant who rolled his eyes at me and called me difficult to his coworker. Now, here's where I say I don't really blame her. She's old enough that I expect she's grown up in an environment where her tears are magical and people bend over backwards to accommodate her. And she didn't seem to have malicious intent as she thanked the flight attendant for moving her. He told her it was no problem. This is what else he said. Well, it was dicey at first because she, gesturing over to me, was uncooperative, but we found someone else to move for you. I'm so glad we were able to get you out of there. We could see that a horrible situation was brewing. Senior flight attendant comes up to see if everything's okay, receives thanks from the lady, who then asks the junior flight attendant to point out who moved so she could thank him, and the junior flight attendant says, "Oh, he's nobody. He works for the airline, so no need to thank him." Now, I'm really upset. Y'all, I am livid. I don't care if he works for the airline. How dare you say he's nobody important and doesn't deserve thanks? As the junior guy heads to the back, senior flight attendant, who's been standing there this whole time since she came up, asks if our row needs anything. And I was like, I just need this plane to hurry up and land so I can get off. I guess she thought it was medical emergency or something because she seemed really concerned and asked what was wrong. And I told her I'm tired of hearing how I didn't want to give up my seat just because someone else wanted to move. And yes, I said it loud enough for the lady who moved to hear it. I don't know that she did, but I said it loud enough that people around us heard it. The senior flight attendant, she hardened her face and said, "I don't know what you're talking about." I look at her, I gesture at the lady, and she repeats, "I don't know what you're talking about." I say, "Never mind," and I put my earbuds back in. Y'all, I'm so mad. I can't even concentrate on my doctoral work. And then I actually get mad at myself for being mad at the situation. I mean, how much of my power was I going to let these people take? How much more personal growth do I need to do so that when things like this happen, it doesn't bother me? For the record, things like this kept happening on this trip, and while there was no straw that broke the camel's back, I was getting pretty close to breaking down. There was a straw that would have broke my back on the next flight, except for some kind-hearted passengers, but I will save that story for another day. I lean over the guy sitting next to me, the one who moved, and I ask him what was this horrible brewing situation that she needed to avoid. "Nothing. Don't worry about it." I could see that he didn't want to get in the middle of it, but I put it like this. Look, that flight attendant keeps bad-mouthing me, and I want to know why. Y'all. Turns out she had selected a seat next to someone who was really, really big. As in, can't put the armrest down, spilling over into her side of the chair. Big. Now, I'm going to let that sink in, and we're going to hold this thought for next week. And we're going to pick up this story next week, and I'm going to tell you the rest of the story, as well as my recommendations for what someone should do when their staff is faced with these kinds of situations. I'm JJ Conway. Thanks for listening to this Juice with JJ. Y'all take care and be blessed.
Love the podcast? Be sure to like, subscribe, and forward to 3 friends. You can ask a question or take a life-changing class at buildingwealthtogether.com. Now, go walk in abundance and leave a legacy.